Hello, and welcome to Set the Record Straight with Elena Lane. I'm here with your submissions to how you have been wronged by the justice system. This is our third episode, and I must really say that I am touched by the stories that I have read. I have quite a few here, so let's get started. This one is called Republican versus Democrat. Please tell about our story. Our religious rights are being violated by Kansas and Sedgwick County Juvenile Court. I wrote this article about the federal government shutdown, Republican versus Democrat. Why not just be American? The federal government has been shut down because adults could not work together. This is pathetic. I know young children who know how to work together better than these adults. Republicans are saying that Obamacare violates Americans' religious rights. Democrats are complaining the Republicans have not produced a better health care plan. Health care is very important. There are more than health care issues which need to be solved. Members of the U.S. Congress have discovered that states were harming children and families. We do not hear about how this is being dealt with. Republicans need to look at the states which are considered Republican. Are there any Republicans violating Americans' religious rights? Kansas is violating our children and families' religious rights. Governor Brownback is Republican. He knows that DCF and juvenile courts are violating our religious rights. Kansas and Sedgwick County Juvenile Court are being investigated for too many children in custody. Too many children did not go home, and First Amendment rights were violated. Our daughters were removed from our home because we would not stop attending church. Lutheran Missouri Synod. I mention our faith because many people were stunned because they were expecting me to say a cult type of church. Practicing our faith in homeschooling with Christ-centered curriculum. Our case is still open. We can discuss the religious rights violations because everybody refused to discuss it in the court except for David and me. The judge handling our case is Republican. Sedgwick County DA is Republican. Kansas Attorney General is Republican. Republicans have to be honest and state they are elected Republicans who are violating Americans' religious rights. Here's a statement that a court worker made. Children do not have constitutional rights. This court worker is Republican. The economy is affected by Americans' constitutional rights being violated. The U.S. future is also affected by Americans' constitutional rights being violated. Children are harmed by being removed from their home wrongfully and not allowed to go back home. Can the U.S. handle all of the people who may be on disability because of what the state and juvenile courts have done to them? We need Americans in the U.S. Congress, not Republicans and Democrats. Stop hurting the future of the U.S. Start protecting the children whose states are harming and may also be accountable for some of the children dying. Everybody is talking about Democrats versus Republicans, who's right, who's wrong. This story interests me for the simple fact that we forget about the children who are caught up in it too. Here's one I can relate to. It's called Baby Snatched from Hospital. Well, my story started was when I was in the homeless shelter. At that time, I had my daughter. She was 6 at the time, and I was pregnant with my first boy, Chansey Jr. After I had my son, they took him from me from the hospital. Then I moved into a 4-bedroom house where me and my baby got violently attacked. You could Google his name, Chanzie, Chanzie, Washington. After that, they pushed our visits back to once a month. Then I had our second son, which they took from the hospital because they had the others we were still fighting for. Then we had our third child, which I have custody of now, but they took him from the hospital when he was born. They took all my kids from the hospital except my oldest. It's not like I gave up. I was fighting the whole situation. But I filed an appeal for my boys because my parental rights were terminated in 2011. Mind you, this began in 2006. People, I just rate them. And sometimes when you are so upset, your mind races faster than your fingers can get to the keyboard. So this person knows what she was trying to say, even if nobody else does. But still, I can relate because I had my last 2 babies snatched from the hospital. And that's a painful deal. This one is called Brain Cancer Granddaughter. I'm taking you up on your offer and telling you my story. Boulder County CPS illegally kidnapped my then 5-year-old granddaughter on February 2nd, 2012 by walking into my home without knocking, without a warrant or court order, followed by 2 Boulder County police officers, all out of their jurisdiction as I live in Larimer County, and told me that they were taking my granddaughter, who has brain cancer, and whom I have raised since the day she was born because my parents and grandparents had a long history of abuse. They placed my precious grandchild in an abusive foster care home, where the caretaker has an assault charge on her record. My granddaughter has complained about being abused by the foster lady and the caseworker. I have reported my granddaughter's complaints, as well as seen evidence of this abuse myself. And no one will look into it or do anything about it, and she remains in this terrible place. When they cannot find any dirt to hang on me, as I have never broken any laws, never even had a traffic ticket, I'm a witness to that too, they went after my 14-year-old son, who is handicapped/autistic and mentally 7 years old, and falsely accused him of sexually abusing my granddaughter. This never happened, and I can prove it. I had my son assessed by a professional who confirms that my son is incapable of such actions, as it would require careful planning, skill, manipulation, etc. And my son is incapable of forming any kind of plans, much less carrying one out without help. Then Boulder County CPS called in a favor from Larimer County CPS to make the allegations against my son stick. But it backfired on them when the Larimer County workers gave my 12-year-old daughter's name and information to one of our male neighbors and told this unstable man that it was my 12-year-old daughter who turned him into CPS. She never did any such thing. This man became so enraged that he called me on my cell phone and threatened to kill me and my daughter for stabbing him in the back. I was able to get this man to calm down some, and he told me that this CPS worker, Mia White, had told him that it was my daughter who turned him in and invited us to come to his house the next evening to confront this worker. We did just that and videotaped her confession about doing this to a 12-year-old child. They have done much more damage to my family in the past 20 months since we busted her. And now they are pushing through the adoption with the abusive foster care provider, even though I am the most qualified person to take and raise my granddaughter. Please help if you can. Thank you so much for at least listening to my story. God bless. I was so touched that I actually wrote her back a response, and now I want to read that to you too. I wrote, "Thank you so much, Karen, for your fascinating story. Would you like for me to mention your name, or would you rather stay anonymous?" She wrote back, "You may use my name, Karen Bowman, and my granddaughter's name, Lillian Bowman, if you wish. I am fighting these people tooth and nail. I will not cower and hide from their tyranny, just as my forefathers fought against Britain for the independence and freedoms that we should all have now. And I have no problems with CPS knowing who is coming out about their illegal activities. God bless you, my friend, for looking into these stories and airing some of them. You have more guts than any current media around. Believe me, I've tried to get media coverage to no avail. I'm not a football player, the president, or Justin Bieber, so not important enough to address. Again, thank you so much, and God bless you and your family." I was so touched by that, Karen. Thank you. Your stories, and so many more like them, are the reasons why Randy and I decided to put this together. Because we all have our own horror stories, and if it doesn't apply to the person who's listening to it, no one cares. This one is called Caught Off Guard. Okay, here's my story with CPS/SRS. In December of 2009, myself, my boyfriend of 5 years, and my 2 children, 14-year-old son and my 10-year-old daughter, was staying in a hotel in Overland Park, Kansas, trying to get into an apartment. Well, something happened with my boyfriend and me, and he left me. He had paid a week for us to have somewhere to stay. I had called all the homeless shelters in the metro area, and sadly, they were all full. I was told I had to put my name on a waiting list, so I did. I was down to my last 3 days left from being there, so I tried the homeless hotline one more time. I was told, since I was staying in Kansas, that they would have to put me through in Kansas. Well, I talked to a lady, and she told me she would come to the hotel and talk to me, and she did the next day. Well, she seen that I had food, clean clothes, and we had what we needed. My children were in school at this time in Missouri. I was driving them back and forth every day to school, so the lady did not talk to or even see my children. Then she's going to tell me she forgot her list of emergency numbers, so she was going back to her office and find them, and she would talk to me tomorrow. This would be December 9th, 2009. When I got a call from the lady, she said she would be by with the numbers. Well, instead of a list of numbers, she had a paper with her from the address of the Johnson County Courthouse, 2nd floor, Division 10, Judge Sloan, 1:30 p.m. Then it said at the bottom, "Call Janice if you need a ride," with her number. Okay, for the next year, the judge would continue several times waiting on my children's dad to respond to the attempts of getting a hold of him. But he never did. In November 2010, they finally got to me in the case. The first public defender was not telling me a thing that was going on in my case, so I fired him, and I wrote him, the judge, and SRS a letter telling them why I fired him. I got another public defender, and he does the same thing. Then he's going to tell me if I don't sign over my rights, that it would be a lot harder for me to get my children home than if the court took my rights away. So I signed the temporary custody papers. Then in December 2011, I got a letter at my mom's stating my rights have been taken from me and I am to have no contact with my children at all. I did everything the KVC SRS asked of me. Every time I complete one thing, they would add more, until they stopped talking to me, telling me what was going on with my children. What it really was that my children were calling me every time something happened and cried to me, and I would call KVC. They were mad that I would know what they did before they could tell me. At this point, I feel there is nothing I can do but tell as many people my story, and maybe the right person will help me get them back somehow. Thank you for sharing my story, because I miss my children so, so badly. That story sounds so much like mine. It's amazing the tricks that they pull. And it is so, so sad. But what we have to do is we have to let these people know that we're not falling for their tricks anymore. We know what you're up to. You may have wrote the rules for the game, but we can win. I'm a witness to that too. Until next time, this is Lena Lane. We set the record straight. Y'all have it good out there. God bless.